Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Meeting a coworker or a lover. Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy it! My wife of 15 years cheated on me, so I had to throw her out of the house and make her sign the divorce papers. I'm a 41-year-old guy, and let's call her Maya, my 38-year-old wife. Our story goes back about 17 years when we first crossed paths at a hospital. I was admitted due to an upset stomach, and she happened to be the nurse assigned to take care of me. At the time, she was just starting her nursing career, and I noticed her because of her extra care and kindness. She was like a fresh graduate full of energy and enthusiasm to begin her career. During my 2 days at the hospital, I received exceptional care unlike any I had experienced before. As I was leaving, I asked for her number, and she gave it to me, hoping for some positive feedback on her discharge form. That's how our journey began. We dated for 2 years before tying the knot, and now we're proud parents of 3 children. We've had our fair share of ups and downs, but nothing too serious that would shake our relationship. Until a few months ago, I started noticing a significant change in her behavior. She seemed absent-minded most of the time, but incredibly active on social media. Suddenly, she developed a strong interest in fashion. I don't mind her wanting to update her wardrobe, but what concerns me is her growing indifference toward us, me and our kids, who are now 12, 10, and 10-year-old twins. Lately, they've been complaining that mom doesn't show them the same love and affection as she used to. Our children have always been closer to me because I've been home more often than Maya. I run a digital firm, and I've set up my office on the roof of our house to be available for the kids. It was a way for me to share the responsibility of raising them, and it worked well. However, no matter how much time I spend with them, kids will always crave their mother's presence, and it worries them when they sense her growing distance. Not too long ago, I overheard my youngest twin daughter expressing her concerns to Maya about her absence, both physically and emotionally. Maya dismissed her, thinking they are old enough to take care of themselves and shouldn't bother her. I didn't quite appreciate the way she spoke to my daughter. But we generally respect each other's parenting styles, so I kept my peace. I'm getting really concerned about this situation with Maya. When I tried talking to her about it, she, as usual, blamed her hectic work schedule. It's kind of her go-to excuse whenever someone points out she's stressed. But she usually bounces back from it. However, this time, it's been months, and she's not opening up about what's bothering her. I understand her job can be stressful, but she's been in this profession for 17 years, and I've known her since the early days. This is the first time I've seen such a change in her. We've been through a lot, especially since I left my high-paying job to start my own digital company, which put us in significant debt. Then, when our twins were born, we had no one to help us with the twins and our 2-year-old toddler. It was challenging, but we grew stronger together through those situations. I've never witnessed her behavior like this before. I talked to my best friend about it, and he jokingly suggested she might be seeing someone more attractive. I don't want to jump to conclusions because we've had a 15-year marriage, and she's never given me any reason to doubt her. Now that we're in our midlife, I don't want to damage our relationship by assuming she's cheating. But could this be some sort of midlife crisis? Has anyone else experienced a similar situation with their spouse? Just reaching out to seek some advice. Honestly, it does seem a bit odd for her to suddenly take a keen interest in fashion, especially considering her profession as a nurse, where there's typically a specific dress code. If you had an issue with how she spoke to your daughter, why not address it? Especially if her behavior is out of character. Why not approach her and ask what's going on? I understand that being in a loyal marriage for 15 years doesn't guarantee someone won't cheat, and I appreciate your perspective. Sorry if I came across as defensive in the comments. I totally get where you're coming from. So after reading all your comments hinting at the possibility of cheating, I couldn't help but talk to Maya about it. Instead, I asked her if something had changed between us or if she had feelings for someone else. She seemed surprised by my question and wanted to know why I felt that way. I explained how her recent behavior had been affecting all of us. She admitted that she had been distant lately but attributed it to changes in her work dynamics. Maya had been assisting Dr. Kia for a long time, but now she had a new doctor at the hospital named Dr. Henry. As the on-call physician, Maya was assigned to work with both Dr. Kia and Dr. Henry. But it turns out these two doctors had unresolved issues from their past. They used to date back in the early days of their careers, but their relationship ended in a bitter breakup. Now they can't stand each other. Maya finds herself caught in the middle. And it's taking a toll on her because they both pile up work on her, hoping to overload the other with tasks. The way Maya explained her problems seemed entirely valid to me. I suggested she talk to the hospital management about it, but she felt hesitant, saying she couldn't complain based on speculation alone. She assured me she'd handle it her way and needed some time to figure out a solution. After that conversation, I noticed a significant improvement in Maya's life. She started returning to her normal routine, coming home on time, being present for the kids, and spending quality time with me. I asked her if she had resolved her issues with Kia and Henry, and she admitted that she hadn't but had chosen to ignore work problems at home. I mentioned that ignoring them might not be the best solution and could lead to a blow-up later, but she insisted she would talk to them. I decided to let her handle the situation at her own pace. Gradually, I observed that she was happier than before. She told me things were improving with Kia, and her workload was gradually easing. I was delighted to see her less stressed and even going out for nights with Kia to bond outside of work. I didn't mind her taking a break and spending time with friends. Her job is demanding, and she deserves some relaxation. I thought our problem was resolved after that discussion, but in the past week, I've noticed her returning to her previous behavior. I asked if things had worsened, and she confirmed that her issues with Kia had regressed to where they started. When I inquired if it had anything to do with Henry, she became angry, suggesting I was prying too much into her business. She insisted that her relationship with her co-workers was just a typical work bond and not a lifelong friendship. I suggested that she might consider switching jobs since she has 17 years of substantial experience and could easily secure a higher ranking, better paying position at top hospitals. However, she expressed reluctance, citing her years of dedication to the current hospital and her reputation there. She wasn't keen on changing jobs at this stage in her career. Ultimately, it's her decision, and I don't want to interfere with her career choices. Thanks for listening to my concerns. Though regarding your observation about her getting angry when I ask about work, it does make me wonder if there's something she's keeping from me. It's a bit concerning, but I'm trying to give her space to handle it in her own way. The last time I shared an update, I thought that would be the end of it, but as it turns out, there's more to this story. The past 3 to 4 months have been a roller coaster. Some days Maya has been loving and caring, while on others, she behaves like a total stranger. My kids have almost given up on her, and they say that mom's behavior is just unpredictable. Whenever I tried to offer some help or advice, she would retort with, "As self-employed, you don't have to answer to anyone. You won't understand what it's like to report to a boss." I did consider suggesting that she take a break from work for a few months, but I know how passionate she is about her profession, so I decided to back off. I came to accept that her stress was likely tied to her work problems, and there was probably little I could do to change that. About a week ago, she dropped the bombshell. She told me she was going to Denver for a training program along with other nurses and doctors. It was a 2-day trip, and this was the first time her hospital was sending nurses for cross-training. Maya was one of the lucky ones selected for this upskilling opportunity. I was genuinely happy for her, thinking this would be a refreshing change from her monotonous routine. I assured her that I would take care of the kids, allowing her to fully focus on her work. She seemed genuinely excited about the trip. On the day of her supposed work trip, I offered to drop her off at the airport, but she declined, mentioning that the hospital had arranged a bus for all the attendees. She also said she wouldn't be able to answer calls or texts during the trip, so I should refrain from disturbing her. I understood and let her be on her way. The day she was due to return, she told me she'd be home by 7 p.m., but it was already 10 o'clock and her phone was switched off. I assumed her phone's battery had died during the trip, so I decided to go to the hospital to pick her up. I inquired with the receptionist if Maya had returned from her training, only to find that the receptionist had no information about any training. She promised to check with Maya's department and asked me to wait. As I waited, the receptionist attended to a few other inquiries, Eventually, she called me over and informed me that, according to Dr. Kia, who was in charge of Maya, she had been on leave for the past 2 days. I was taken aback and asked her to double-check, but she insisted this was the information she received. I then asked if I could meet with Dr. Kia, but the receptionist told me the doctor was busy and it would take some time for her to become available. I decided to wait a while but eventually left the hospital without meeting Dr. Kia. Later, around midnight, Maya sent a text saying her flight had been delayed and that she had just landed. She arrived home late that night. Strangely, I chose not to confront her about my hospital visit. Instead, I simply asked her how her training had gone, and she replied with good and tiring. So, after my last update, I received quite a bit of criticism for not confronting my wife immediately when I suspected something was amiss. Look, folks, not everyone is always in the mood for a confrontation. Sometimes it takes time to gather the courage. Anyway, about a week after that incident, I received a friend request on social media from none other than Dr. Kian. This couldn't be just a coincidence, could it? Naturally, I accepted the request. She mentioned that she was busy the other day when I wanted to meet her, and I played it cool, saying no problem at all. But I had a feeling there was more to this. Keen explained that she had been trying to contact me earlier but couldn't find me with just my first name. However, on that particular day, I had provided my full name to the receptionist, which is pretty common. I asked her why she had been trying to reach me. That's when she dropped a bombshell. She sent me a video clip showing Maya getting a bit too close and cozy with Henry. This was at a birthday party, and Maya's behavior was, well, let's just say it was highly inappropriate. The clip only showed a few seconds, but Keen claimed to have the full video of that night. She proposed a face-to-face meeting to share the rest of the details. Naturally, I agreed and met with Keen the next day. That's when she spilled the beans. It turns out that Keen and Henry had been in a relationship during their internship days. However, Henry's serial cheating habits eventually led to a nasty breakup between them. When Henry joined the same hospital and ended up in the same department as Maya, tensions flared up. Keen admitted that initially, she had indeed piled extra work on Maya to ensure she couldn't take on Henry's workload. But when Maya complained to her about the unfair treatment, Keen realized her mistakes and understood that she had been unjustly punishing Maya. Alright, here's the deal. To make up for her past behavior, Keen decided to take Maya out for dinners and nights out. During this time, Kia, who had previously broken up with Henry, got closer to Maya. In one drunken moment, Kia shared some intimate details about Henry's prowess in the bedroom. After that, whenever Maya and Kia hung out, Maya would ask her to spill the beans about Henry's bedroom skills. Kia became suspicious and straight up asked Maya if she was into Henry. At first, Maya denied it, but in another boozy moment, she admitted to having some fantasies about Henry. However, she made it clear she didn't want to cross any lines and jeopardize her marriage. Word got around among their colleagues, and Henry, being the smooth operator that he is, used the opportunity to get closer to Maya. Soon, rumors started circulating about their alleged affair. Naturally, I was concerned. So I asked Kia if she had any concrete evidence to back up these claims. Unfortunately, there was no evidence because Maya and Henry used an empty patient's room during their secret rendezvous, and there were no security cameras inside. But Kia did mention that on the day Maya claimed to be on her training trip to Denver, Henry was coincidentally on leave as well. That raised some serious suspicions. Armed with this information, I decided to confront Maya. I got the videos from Kia, thanked her, and headed home. When Maya returned from her night shift, I couldn't sleep a wink all night, tossing and turning. In the morning, I finally mustered the courage to tell her that I knew the truth. She immediately tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding, claiming that she had simply dozed off on Henry's shoulder during a night shift. But I wasn't even talking about that incident. I confronted her about the Denver trip lie and her time spent with Henry during those 2 days. Before she could say anything, I showed her the video evidence I had obtained from Kia. She cursed Kia and accused her of fabricating fake videos to ruin their relationship. However, I informed her that there was another video circulating in the hospital group that showed her leaning on Henry's shoulder while he was being quite touchy-feely. I told her that hiding the truth wasn't helping anyone and encouraged her to come clean. That's when Maya broke down in tears and confessed. Her version of the story matched what Kia had told me, with the key difference being that Maya claimed Henry had made the first move and she couldn't resist his advances. She emphasized that for 17 years, she had been faithful to me and hadn't been involved with anyone else. She didn't realize how close people had become and how they were exploring new things. When I asked her about the trip, she admitted that she was indeed with Henry, and they spent their time locked up in a hotel room, well, being intimate. She tried to phrase it more subtly, but it essentially boiled down to what I had suspected. She referred to it as a breakup encounter because she felt guilty about jeopardizing our marriage. She wanted to end the affair, but Henry insisted on one final meeting, which led to their secret rendezvous. She claimed it was over and that she had no intention of seeing him again. It's that classic line cheaters use when they're caught, right? But she insisted that even if she hadn't been caught, she planned to end it. I told her I would be consulting a lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings, and in the meantime, she needed to find her own place to live. Our home also houses my office, so I couldn't leave. I made it clear that I would seek custody of the children because she had been neglecting them, and they were closer to me. They would stay with me in our house, and she would have to leave. She acted shocked and tried to argue that I couldn't divorce her after being married for 15 years. My response was simple: if she can betray our commitment after all these years, then I can certainly seek a divorce, right? Despite her desperate pleas and begging, I remained resolute about ending the marriage. I spoke to Mallory, presumably a lawyer, and he's in the process of handling the legal paperwork. She's still living in the house, and it's only been 3 days since the confrontation. I told her it was her responsibility to talk to the children about the divorce and provide them with an age-appropriate explanation. If she didn't, I warned her that I would be forced to tell them the truth. As for those who think she fabricated the videos, it would indeed require a lot of effort to create fake evidence, and it's rather absurd. The fact remains that she broke a pact that signifies commitment and permanence. Marriage is supposed to be a lifelong commitment, and she clearly didn't grasp that concept. After much pleading when I stood firm on my decision, Maya finally told the kids that we were separating. To my surprise, all 3 of them immediately expressed their desire to live with me. I asked them how they came to that decision. And one of them mentioned that a friend's parents who had divorced were asked to choose between their parents by the police. My eldest son explained that whenever they saw issues between Maya and me, they had talked about it, and they had collectively decided that if we ever separated, they would choose to live with me because I had always been there for them, whereas Mama was often away. Maya couldn't hold back her tears, and the kids comforted her, reassuring her that they would visit her during holidays. I couldn't be prouder of my children for their maturity and understanding in this difficult situation. It goes to show that kids are often more perceptive and mature than we give them credit for. As I mentioned earlier, I asked Maya to leave our house. She can keep the money from her joint account, and I won't be contributing any more to it. There's enough money in there for her to buy a house, and she's already earning, so she can support herself just fine. As for custody, the kids have already made up their minds to live with me and visit Mom occasionally. I'm fine with that arrangement unless she tries to manipulate them. If she does, I'll have to restrict her contact with them until they're adults. When she was served with the divorce papers, she made a last-ditch effort by asking the children to convince me not to go through with it. I asked them why they had suddenly changed their stance as they seemed fine with the divorce when they first heard about it. My daughter confessed that Mom had asked them to request that I reconsider. I called Maya and warned her not to involve our children in her attempts to avoid the divorce or she wouldn't be allowed to see them. She hadn't signed the divorce papers yet and was pleading with me for one last chance. She didn't ask for any alimony, but she wanted to stay married. I threatened to share her videos with both sets of parents, and that's when she finally signed the papers and set me free. It's not easy for me to move on after being together for 17 years, but I have to accept that she's no longer a part of my life. I'm doing my best to focus on my work and the well-being of my children. Surprisingly, the kids have handled this situation quite well. Maybe they were mentally prepared for it long before Maya's behavior started to change, and that's a relief for all of us. That was our first story in this video. Let's listen to our next story, which will be no less interesting. Hey guys. I'm a 36-year-old dude rocking the dad life for 8 years now, with 2 kiddos in the mix. Also, I'm the only son to my dad, who's been on a pretty rough health journey. So here's the deal, my old man has been battling kidney issues for a long while. But things took a nosedive in the past 2 to 3 years, and now he's on dialysis twice a week. He used to handle it like a champ, but lately, he's been feeling weaker and has asked me to tag along. I've stepped into this routine where I'm his dialysis buddy. No way I can leave him to face this alone. We're locked into the schedule where every Saturday, thankfully my day off, and Wednesday, we head to his sessions for the midweek hustle. I've managed to swing an early leave from work. I clock back in at night to catch up on what I missed. I've been at this job for a solid decade, so they understand the drill. It's a juggle, but hey, that's life, right? Thought I'd share my story here and maybe hear from others in the same boat. How do you all manage your family responsibilities and work life? My boss has always regarded me as a dedicated and loyal employee, so granting this special request wasn't a big deal for him. However, the real challenge surfaced at home with my wife, Avril, 34. When she learned that I'd be taking my dad for dialysis twice a week, she became upset. She didn't particularly like it when I used to take him occasionally, but she never directly expressed her displeasure. Now that I've taken up this responsibility consistently, she couldn't hold back her feelings. She mentioned that there was no use in investing my time in my father because no matter what I did, he would never be impressed by me. To provide some background, my dad was the owner of a merchandising business. He was quite prosperous and had accumulated a significant amount of wealth. He had hoped for me to take over his business, but my passion lay elsewhere, in the field of technology. I had a strong interest in coding and software development, so after finishing school when my dad suggested that I pursue business or management courses, I opted for a software degree instead. Initially, he was fine with this decision as long as I was willing to join his company eventually. However, upon completing my graduation, I began working for a well-known tech firm. This did not sit well with my dad, who was displeased that I chose to work for someone else instead of carrying forward his legacy. He persisted in urging me to join his business, but I kept postponing the decision. After getting married, my dad made one final proposition, asking me if I wanted to be a part of his business. My response was a firm no. This greatly angered him, and he threatened to donate all his wealth to charity, leaving me with nothing. Still, I remained resolute in my choice. You see, I was already earning a good income at that point. By the age of 29, I had purchased my own car and house. I had confidence that I could lead a comfortable life without relying on his wealth. I conveyed to him that I didn't require his money and could build my own wealth. Unfortunately, our relationship deteriorated from that point onward. 5 years ago, my mother passed away from a cardiac arrest, and it had a profound impact on my dad. You see, when I was 17, I moved out of our home to attend college, and later on, I found a job and started living independently. The primary companion my dad had was my mom, so losing her was incredibly devastating for him. It was during this period that our connection grew stronger. I began visiting him frequently, often bringing my kids along to spend time with him. Eventually, he made the decision to step down from his company and entrusted it to a trust for management. My wife, Avril, had never been close to my parents. Even while my mother was alive, Avril would avoid visiting them, citing that my mother was overly intrusive in our lives and they didn't get along. However, when my father announced his intention to remove me from his will, Avril began openly criticizing my parents, labeling them as unkind and malevolent. I tried to keep her from interfering in my relationship with my parents, but she consistently asserted that it would impact our future, particularly our children's. I reassured her that our future, as well as our children's, was secure regardless of my dad's wealth, but she was unwilling to comprehend this perspective. Now, in the current situation, Avril caused a commotion upon learning that I would be accompanying my dad for dialysis twice a week. Initially, I attempted to convey to her that my dad had no one else but me. His parents had passed away long ago, and despite having an older brother, he resided on the other side of the city and rarely visited my dad. Dad has been feeling incredibly lonely since Mom's passing, and given his condition, I can't simply leave him alone. Unfortunately, my wife refuses to comprehend this. Lately, she's been making my life quite challenging. Every Saturday, she comes up with various plans, whether it's hosting a house party, conducting an extensive cleaning session, taking the kids out, or even something as trivial as grocery shopping. I've tried explaining to her that she's free to plan anything she likes on Sundays because Saturdays are reserved for taking Dad to his dialysis sessions. However, she continues making plans only to later criticize me for being late or missing out. I have to rush to pick up my dad, transport him to the dialysis center, wait for the procedure to finish, and then drop him off before returning home to her snide remarks and tantrums. The issue isn't limited to just Saturdays. She behaves the same way on Wednesday evenings. I had committed to my boss that I would make up for the remaining work either late in the evening or during the night after returning from dialysis. Yet she consistently finds a way to create problems. Almost every Wednesday evening, she goes out, whether it's to see her family, reconnect with old friends, or attend some random gathering, leaving me solely responsible for the children. I end up juggling my job, preparing meals for the kids, feeding the youngest one, and trying to complete my pending tasks at work simultaneously. This all happens after a tiring day at work and at the dialysis center. I know this is becoming quite lengthy, but it truly reflects the difficult situation I'm in. Many times, my dad has suggested that I let him go to the center with the nurse because he sees me always in a rush and feeling stressed, constantly checking my watch even when I drop him off at home. I don't take a moment's pause. I immediately hurry back. I even ask him to be ready and waiting outside when I come to pick him up. Dad has a full-time nurse and a caregiver to look after him, but I still feel guilty for not spending quality time with him. The drive from his place to the center takes about 30 minutes. In the past, I used to enjoy conversing with him during that drive, reminiscing about our childhood memories. However, with Aval's increasing demands, my primary concern now is racing back home. Most of the time, I find myself speeding in traffic, taking shortcuts, and overtaking other vehicles just to shorten the travel time. This drive is the only time I have to connect with Dad, and I don't want to spoil it or put an end to it by asking him to go with the nurse. As a son, I have certain responsibilities too. I'm simply finding it increasingly difficult to tolerate this woman. It's deteriorating day by day. My wife is making every effort to discourage me from looking after my father. Her argument is that it's a lost cause. Dad has already removed me from his will and donated his wealth to charity, so there's no point in wasting time and energy on him. I struggle to comprehend her perspective. Do we do everything in life purely for financial gain or loss? What about individuals whose parents have little to no wealth or are in poverty? Should their children abandon them simply because they have nothing material to offer? After enduring her outbursts for several months, I eventually pointed out that she wouldn't inherit anything substantial from her own parents. So why did she keep visiting them regularly? She became extremely upset at this and retorted, "My parents did a lot more for me than your greedy father. They supported me in every way. They're nothing like your father who disowned you for not joining his business. My father would never do that to me, so don't you dare compare my parents to yours." This type of argument has become a regular occurrence in my home, especially on Wednesdays and Saturdays after I return from dialysis. What's different now is that these conflicts are escalating and turning more hostile. In the past, she used to argue with me alone, but it's no longer the case. Now, I find her yelling and screaming at me in front of our children. What's worse is that I've overheard her speaking negatively about my dad in front of the kids and trying to turn them against both me and my dad. I couldn't stand by and let this happen, so I stepped in, which inevitably led to another heated argument between us. Aval's confrontations have become a regular occurrence in my life. On the days when she doesn't argue, it almost feels strange, as if something is missing. And she tends to become even more aggressive the following day. I've almost given up on her. Instead of shouting back or engaging with her, I've chosen to ignore her, treating her as if she doesn't exist in my world. What other option do I have? I can't abandon my father just to please her. I don't care if he's removed me from his will, that decision was a result of my own choices. I declined to join his business, which forced him to hand over his hard-earned company to a trust, a truly heartbreaking move for him. That business was like a child to my dad, and he had to entrust it to someone else. He had every right to disown me because I had hurt him. Sometimes I feel like karma is getting back at me for the pain I caused my dad. Meanwhile, my father's condition is deteriorating. He can barely walk on his own and requires assistance even to get into the car. I used to rush him outside to save time. But now I don't mind being a little late. I go inside to assist him in getting to the car and then carefully help him settle into his bed until he's comfortable. He's experiencing shortness of breath, so I make sure to accommodate his pace during our walk. When driving, I'm cautious not to exceed the speed limit to prevent any strain on his heart. I don't mind arriving home late because hurrying back hasn't been beneficial. If I have to deal with my difficult wife anyway, why not prioritize keeping my dad content? My relaxed approach has aggravated the situation. Just yesterday, Avril confronted me, demanding that I make a choice between her and my dad. I attempted to explain that my dad's time with us is limited given his condition, and it doesn't seem like he'll be with us much longer. She responded with a harsh remark suggesting I should carefully consider whether to be with someone who will be around forever or someone who will pass away soon. It was an incredibly insensitive comment. I told her, you know what? I'd rather choose my dad than pick you, considering how unkind and self-centered you are towards a dying man. She packed her bags and left. I didn't stop her. She needed time to cool off, and I needed some space from her. In her absence, I'm managing the household, taking care of the kids, looking after my dad, and handling my work. Surprisingly, I feel relieved and much more at ease. Her absence is genuinely comforting to me. The day before yesterday, she sent me divorce papers. I was somewhat expecting it, but I didn't think it would come so soon. I was surprised, but deep down, I felt happy and relieved. I didn't call her. Instead, I just signed the papers and sent them back. Surprisingly, she didn't request custody of the children. That was the only part one was concerned about, but she clearly didn't want them. When she received the papers, she called me and yelled at me for signing them without talking to her and trying to persuade her. Funny, right? Her mom grabbed the phone and insisted I should have acted like a man and attempted to reconcile with my wife instead of just signing the papers. It was quite amusing. Why would I do that? She wanted a divorce, and I complied. I thought it was best for me as I got rid of her without a fuss. I even pointed out that she had abandoned her children and didn't want them. She said I could have all my assets, including my 2 children. She didn't want any of it. Her mother mentioned that Avril was still very young and didn't want the responsibility of children. I said that was fine by me. I'm glad to have my kids with me. It's definitely a relief for me, but I'm worried about my children. They miss their mom, especially the younger one. When I'm at the office, it's challenging for me to handle all the responsibilities alone, but I hope I'll be able to manage this situation. So, I moved to Dad's house with my children, and I must say, it was a fantastic decision. Thanks to everyone for the wonderful suggestion, it really worked out. Living with Dad has been great for all of us. Dad enjoys the company of my children, and they have their grandpa to play with. We hired a full-time caregiver who takes care of my children under my dad's supervision, which is a fantastic arrangement, right? It's such a joyful sight to see Dad playing and laughing with my children, and they are having a great time with their grandpa. Avril probably didn't expect this. She wanted to make my life difficult by divorcing me, thinking I wouldn't be able to handle all the responsibilities, taking care of the children. My dad, the house, and work. But as you can see, everything is perfectly in place. I'm definitely having the last laugh. The divorce turned out to be the best thing ever. It's heartbreaking news. My dad passed away peacefully in his sleep last week. He went to bed content and happy after spending time with my children. And he never woke up again. The doctor confirmed that he had a peaceful passing. The doctor, his nurse, and even his caregiver mentioned that Dad was genuinely happy after I moved in with him, and this actually extended his life by several months. He was on the brink of giving up before I came. Losing your only parent is always very sad, but I take solace in the fact that he enjoyed his last few months. My children are also grieving his loss, but they've learned valuable lessons from Grandpa. They talk about how he taught them to accept reality and keep moving forward because life doesn't stop for anyone. I'm incredibly proud to hear these things from them. They are my source of strength during this difficult time. However, there's another surprising development. After Dad's passing, Dad's lawyer contacted me, asking me to visit his office to discuss Dad's will. I told him it wasn't necessary because Dad had already informed me that he had left his entire wealth to the trust, and I was fine with that. I even inquired about whether I needed to vacate Dad's house, suspecting it might also have been given to the charity trust. The lawyer chuckled and insisted that I should come over to his office. When I arrived there, I saw that the trust members were already present. The lawyer had summoned them too. As the lawyer began reading the will, tears welled up in my eyes. Surprisingly, Dad had named me as his heir. Everything he owned, his business, his house, his wealth, was designated for me. I asked the lawyer if this change had been made recently, thinking it might have happened after I started taking care of him. The lawyer smiled and assured me that I had always been his heir and the will had never been altered. I couldn't stop crying, realizing that my dad had never abandoned me. Perhaps he had threatened to disown me to encourage me to carry on his business and legacy. I continued shedding tears when Dad's attorney comforted me. I expressed how it pained me to have hurt my dad throughout his life. Yet he had always cared for me. The lawyer shared that Dad was actually very proud of my decision not to give up on my passion despite his pressure and my willingness to forego our generational wealth to pursue it. Dad held me in high regard. The lawyer also informed me that I held the authority over the business, and if I wished, I could reclaim the company from the trust and manage it myself. I'm contemplating doing just that. I followed my heart and did what I wanted with Dad's indirect support. Now it's my turn to repay him. I'm considering reclaiming the business from the trust and taking it to the heights my dad had envisioned for his company. I returned home and shared the news of Grandpa's will with my kids. He has allocated a portion of his wealth to them, which they'll receive once they reach the age of 18. Today, we visited his grave, bringing along flowers, and spent a peaceful moment there. It's a highly emotional time for me. You know, the aunts quickly returned when they spotted the sugar candy. About a month after my father passed away, I began taking charge of his business and community service responsibilities. To start, I resigned from my job and assumed control of the business. As a result, I decided to rent out my own house. My kids and I chose to reside in my parents' house since they have a special connection to their grandpa in that home. Plus, it holds many of my childhood memories, so I'm reluctant to leave it. With the news of inheriting my father's $1 million fortune, my home became a hub for visitors, including long-lost relatives, friends, and neighbors. However, the most unexpected visitors were my ex-wife, Avril, and her parents. They entered the house in tears, claiming they hadn't been aware of my father's passing, or else they would have attended the funeral. Her parents spoke highly of my dad. Avril embraced the children and expressed how much she missed them. I questioned why she hadn't visited them in the past 7 to 8 months if she missed them so much. She explained that she had gone to our house, but it was locked. What a load of nonsense. I couldn't help but wonder, weren't you concerned about your children when you found the house locked? Didn't it occur to you to reach out and check on their well-being? She had no response. Her parents chimed in, suggesting we should forget the past now that my father was no longer with us. The children would be alone in the house while I was at work. They argued that the kids needed a mother, so it was best for us to reconcile. I openly laughed at their suggestion. The children needed her the most when she left them with me. They've since adjusted to her absence, and I have no desire to bring her back into our lives. She started crying, her parents left us alone, and she took hold of my hands, pleading for reconciliation. She claimed she loved me and missed being with the children. I chuckled and told her that she didn't love me, she loved the wealth my dad left behind. I didn't regret speaking my mind about her parents because that's exactly what they were. She had also called my dad greedy and mean during our divorce, so I wasn't about to let this woman get her hands on a penny of my dad's hard-earned money. She was offended that I had insulted her parents. She stated that up until now, her pleas were driven by her love for me, but now she would assert her rightful claim. She didn't ask for any alimony during the divorce, but now she's insisting on half of my wealth, which is essentially half of my dad's wealth. I made it clear that I won't give her a single penny, even if it means taking legal action. She insulted me and walked away. I consulted with my lawyer regarding this situation. He mentioned that her chances of success were slim since the divorce was finalized a year before I inherited the wealth. Additionally, our children are living with me, making it unlikely for her to claim anything. However, my lawyer also advised me to be cautious when allowing her to spend time with the children. He warned that she might try to manipulate them and seek custody, potentially using them to demand financial support. I'm extremely grateful for his guidance, and I intend to supervise their interactions. These days, I'm dedicating a lot of time to the kids to help them cope with the loss, ensuring they don't solely rely on their mother for emotional support. I've taken over my dad's company, which provides me with greater flexibility to manage both my personal life and well-being. I'm even planning a vacation for the kids in the Bahamas. They truly deserve this extravagant getaway. It's not about overspending my dad's wealth. I could afford it even before. The difference now is that I have the time to make such plans, as I no longer need to juggle work and taking care of my dad. As for Avril, she hasn't contacted me since her last visit. I assume she's busy seeking legal counsel to pursue a lawsuit against me. What do you think of our stories today? As for me, the stories are quite interesting. I liked the first story better. The husband acted smartly enough, not making unnecessary scandals. What's your opinion? Write your opinion in the comments. Until new videos.